Ukudalula inkohlakalo eningizimu Afrika kubeka impilo zalabo abasuke belwisana nalesi sihlava engozini. Sibala ke mbukelo ukubulawa ngesihluku emasontweni adlule kwaMatha Mani osebenza eMfuleni Municipality, uMpho Mafule kumasipala waseGruleni ngonyaka odlule, uEric Phenya ngo-2022, uBabita Diokaran ngo-2021 nabanye abaningi. Abanye ke mbukeli noma bengabulawa bayasongelwa baphelelwe imisebenzi yize kunomthetho okufanele ubavikele. Ungqongqoshe wezobulungiswa nokuthuthukiswa komthethosisekelo uMamuliko Kubayi usanda kushicilela uhlaka lomthethosivivinyo wokudalula okuvikelwe okuhloswe ngawo ukuvala ikhala zomthetho kanye nokuqinisa ukuvikelwa kwalaba ababika inkohlakalo. Ukuphawula komphakathi ngalomthethosivivinyo mbukeli kuvuliwe koze kuvalwe ngomhla ka-14 kuNhlaba. Namuhla ke mbukeli sibuza ukuthi is enough being done to protect whistleblowers uma ubuka nje mbukeli ukubulawa kwabo nokukhalaza kwalaba ababike inkohlakalo besongelwa. Asekubingeleleke mbukeli sikwamukela ohlelweni. Igama lami ngingubongiwe uMakhumalo kwaKwaZwane. Khumbula ke mbukeli ukuthi ungaba ingxenye lolu hlelo, sishayile ucingo sizwe umbuzo noma umbono wakho. Inombolo zethu 0117140669 noma 0670. Siyatholakala futhi kumakhasetho okuxhumana ku-X SABC Izindaba, ku-Facebook ke mbukeli ikhasi lethu SABC Izindaba. Ukuze kube lula ungaqala ngo#Asikhulume #SABC News bese ke ubhala umbuzo noma umbono wakho. Asikhulume. Mbukele ngaphambi kokuba samukele ihambele zethu ake sibukele umbiko esiwuhlanganiselwe intatheli yalolu hlelo uVuyokazi Kafile.
Odiza amahlebo kweli loMzantsi Afrika baba sesichengeni emva kokubhenca urhwaphilizo kwaye izinga eliphezulu leziganeko zokubulawa kwabo ziphawula ukuba abo baye bazijula ijacu kwidabu lokusuphula nengcambu urhwaphilizo babeka ubomi babo esichengeni.
We also know the whereabouts of where you drop off your kids in the mornings and pick them up in the afternoons, and then all the vehicle registrations of the cars, we have them available.
Ezi zizirhoriso usapho lwakaPhenya elithe lazifumana phambi kokuba kugetyengwe ngokungenalusini uEric Marumo Phenya ngomhla we-17 kweyeDwarha kunyaka ka-2022.
On the 12th, I think it was around 7 p.m., I got a missed call I was in a shower, I got a missed call from the same guy. He said his name was Tolani. There's a hit on me and my husband regarding the contract.
uPhenya wadutyulwa wabulawa eRoodeport emva kweveki nje evule ityala lokuzama ukubulala. Uye wahlaba umkhosi kwizityholo zorhwaphilizo lwethenda lezigidi kwisebe lemicimbi yezekhaya.
He was assassinated like just 3 minutes from, or 2 minutes from our home. My kids were robbed. We were left alone. I had to flee.
Kungoku nje uPhenya ubalwa phakathi kwabanye odiza amahlebo abafana noBabita Diokaran nabanye baphulukana nobomi babo emva kokudiza izenzo zorhwaphilizo. Usapho lukaDiokaran luthi alukwazi ukuxola de kunqakulwe abenzi bobubi.
Hitmen don't hire themselves. Until the mastermind or the masterminds, we don't know how many people were involved to hire the hitmen, are arrested and prosecuted. There will be no closure.
Umphandi wezolwaphulomthetho uChed Thomas uthi kusekuninzi okusafuneka kwenziwe.
When one looks at the Babita murder, for example, those men that pulled the trigger were found guilty. One of them is coming up for parole soon. To this day, we don't know who facilitated the hit, and we don't know who paid for the hit. And that to me is a massive problem.
Ingaba kwenziwa ngokwaneleyo ukulwa urhwaphilizo kweli?
Njengoba sisibonile ngezenzo nangemisebenzi eyenzeka kumadlanga commission nalento eyenzeka ngesikhathi umkhwanazi ezo-announce ukuthi khona ukhohlakalo wenzakala la ezweni. Sibonga kakhulu kuloko mhlambe kuzoba noshintsho.
If someone do crime or do corruption, they must deal with them decisively. They must not take sides.
Vuyokazi Kafile, Asikhulume, let's talk.
Mbukela samkele ihambele zethu Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamoloko Kubayi noMartha Ngoye ongomunye wababika inkohlakalo asenibingelele sinamkele ohlelweni. Martha, perhaps I start with you. Yeah, it must be difficult to watch that because you are someone that has had to understand ukuthi abantu abakhulumayo that are, we call them whistleblowers. What do they go through on a daily basis? You've had your own journey with PRASA.
I have, and I think it's important for me to state outright that it was never my intention to be a whistleblower. I did not go out to be a whistleblower. And I was just doing my job. And as professionals, that's what we do. You do your job. And I think with Babita, the same thing. I mean, with Babita, you can see that she realized that there was issues that were happening at Tembisa Hospital. She didn't go out looking for skinny jeans, right? It was because of what she uncovered then it was then established that issues of skinny jeans came in. So as a professional, she was doing her job. In my case as well at PRASA, I was just doing my job. For instance, the board of PRASA had a delegation of authority where they gave me delegations to depose to affidavits. There's a particular contract that I deposed to the affidavit. It was a very controversial contract. And as the group executive of legal risk and compliance, it was my job to do that. Those were the delegated authorities that I was given. And in the Siangena matter, when the Zondo Commission picked up on the Siangena transaction and understanding the corruption that was involved there, I was then subpoenaed to go and appear at the Zondo Commission. I couldn't say no. And immediately after I had given, my evidence testimony at the Zondo Commission, it was just not the same anymore. But this also did not start, with this particular transaction. It had been coming for a while, so.
Yeah, let me bring in the Minister. I'm going to circle back to some of what you've just said in just a moment. Minister, good evening to you. And I don't know, what was it like for you watching what we've just seen now?
Good evening, Bongiwe, and good evening to our viewers. Look, the issue of whistleblowers and what they go through, and as the guest speaker here in the studio says, many of them don't decide that I'm going to be a whistleblower. And therefore, you wake up and your life is in danger. And there are quite a number of stories I can tell, I can narrate that we've had to intervene. For example, where I've been in various portfolios where you get information to say this is what you can do or this is what has happened and therefore have to act.
Yeah.
But the issue, it's quite, so that's why we had to come. We have to review the protected disclosure or what we call whistleblower. And because if you look at the Zondo Commission as well report, it does reflect that this is an area that needed to be done. And upon my arrival on the portfolio as well, when engaging as I was assigned to the portfolio, the president made it that this is a priority. I did commit that we'll make sure that by this before even the second year I'm on the portfolio, it's in place. And many are saying, yes, you're putting it now, but what about those who have lost their livelihoods? It does not talk to retrospective measures like this. Many others who have lost their jobs, who've been victimized. And what we are trying to do is to deal with the future in acknowledgement of what we have seen, in acknowledgement of what we've had, and therefore to ensure that going forward we can protect whistleblowers.
And Minister, before I go back to Martha, there's something else you speak about as far as the livelihoods is concerned, because that is part of the big problem when it comes to someone who may not have intended to be a whistleblower, but speaks the truth about what is going on. They have what one could call a flag on their name. They don't get hired by anybody because they seem to be troublemakers. At the same time, they then are not able to feed their families. Their houses get repossessed. They lose everything. And I wonder if the bill does deal with that.
The bill does deal with, for example, not necessarily with the future employment, But what it deals with is that when a whistleblower has been identified, or let's say somebody has come forward is a whistleblower, we're raising the issue in terms of disciplinary processes within the department or the organization that they are. It's both for public and private, so it's not only within public sector. So we also deal with the issue because one of the experiences is that you'd find that somebody then feels that they make an environment difficult for a person to operate, and they decide to resign. Let's say somebody decides to resign, is not fired. And then what they would do then as part of punishing the person, they would go and then make sure that their pensions are not paid out on time. For example, somebody can work out to say, okay, I'm going to resign, but I've got enough pension, so I'll pay off my bond and pay off some of my debts, then I can leave. But what they do, then they go and stop the payments of payouts of pensions or delay. For example, you find if it's a department, then they don't submit the forms properly, and then the pension payouts is delayed, and then the people loses their livelihoods. So our engagement as well with the banking association is that the private sector has to come forth so that if a person is declared a whistleblower, the person can be able not to lose their properties through, for example, debts and all those things that they have not been able to pay. The other issue that the bill proposes, for example, with the witness protection, when a witness is put under witness protection, the state takes over their livelihoods and make sure that they remain with livelihoods. Currently, there isn't a mechanism that or a law that allows for that. So with this bill, we're providing for such that when a person is identified, therefore, and is under, let's say, for example, it's an investigation with the SIU. The person has made disclosures to SIU to say, this is what we are doing. I'm just saying an institution. Then once they are formally recognized under that, which will be under NPA, jointly with the witness protection, because we've expanded the mandate, we are expanding the mandate of witness protection to include whistleblowers, then that will be covered in terms of their income and their livelihoods.
So I'm going to circle back to that in just a moment. But Martha, let me come to you quickly before I go to the break. But, you know, this issue of livelihoods is a serious one. It's a very serious one. And I think sometimes we don't get the scale or the gravity of it.
I think it is. I mean, and it's very unfortunate, and I understand what the minister is saying. Normally, the law can't be implemented retrospectively. But however, there are exceptions in the law. I think what pains me sitting and hearing what the minister is saying is that those of us that appeared before the Zondo Commission, right, would not be protected by this particular legislation because the law can't work retrospectively. But in the interim, we have suffered. We've had litigation monies that we've had to pay. We've had psychological bills that we've had to pay. Our credit rating went out of the roof. I mean, our livelihoods were destroyed. And why? Because the state had the resources to fight us, you know, even though what we were doing was country duty. So when you think about that, you know, it's not like we don't welcome, you know, the introduction of this particular bill. In fact, we want to be intentional about it. And that's why we're making such an effort that we will give the minister comments to the legislation, because the intention that we would like to see is the recognition of whistleblowers. This legislation should not be called the protected disclosure. You know, it should be called the protection of whistleblowers legislation, so that we are very clear. This is one of the suggestions that we're making. But also, I mean, I think it's very sad that there will be no reparations, and this is the suggestion that we're making to the minister, to say, let there be reparations for those that blew the whistle at the time of Zondo.
When we come back, I want you to tell me what reparations look like. Okay. Mbokeli sikubingelele sikwamukele futhi ohlelweni kanti uma uqeda ukuhlanganyela kanye nathi sikhuluma ngeinkinga ezibhekene nalabo abadalula inkohlakalo. Martha, you were talking about the issue of reparations. What does that look like for you?
Look, I can give you an example in my case, right? And I'm very clear that my dismissal, for instance, at PRASA was unlawful. It was determined by the Labour Court that it's unlawful. It was determined by the Labour Appeal Court that it's unlawful. But in the interim, I've had legal bills that I've had to pay out of my own pocket. When PRASA was using state resources, for instance, to fight against me, when it was very clear what they've done, even determined by the courts that my dismissal was unlawful. And I'll tell you, because I was dismissed for a 5-year contract, which does not exist. To date, PRASA has not given me a 5-year contract. And the reality of the matter is that I had to be rid of. I mean, it was very clear. To me, it was said to me in a meeting, you know, full of other executives, to say, get them out, and they will never be able to withstand the might of the state. This was said by a DG of the Department of Transport in a meeting of executives of both the Department of Transport and PRASA. We've raised this issue. It was intended, and they knew we would not be able to sustain and keep up with the might of the state. I still owe lawyers' bills. Currently, I'm still in court. I still owe lawyers' bills.
Yeah.
You know, so it's talking to issues like that which can be proven, obviously, to say this is what I lost in trying to say I was doing country duty and trying to save the organization money.
I want to take Andy in Cape Town. Andy, someone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
I think whistleblowers are not protected. I mean, the legislation or the bill that's come into place is good on paper. You know, it still lacks in certain instances. But when you look at the impact of what whistleblowers expose, it's much broader than just a financial impact. It's an impact. For instance, Martha is talking about PRASA. If we had a clampdown on corruption, we'd have a railway system that is functional. So what does that do for the economy in terms of employment? You know, it creates, when we look at Babita, for instance, Babita Diokoran was killed.
Yeah.
The fact that she exposed 800 million, which has gone up to 3 billion now, what could that have done for people that need hospital services? So it's not just about financials. It's also about the total impact. My feeling is that we should be treating the corruption as high treason, especially in this case, where if it is impacting companies, the country's ecosystem.
Okay, Andy, thank you so much. That's Andy from Cape Town there. And, corruption is not a victimless crime. And, Minister, as I bring you back into this conversation, quickly before you and I get to Clause 23, I want us to pass this point. There are people who say they're watching the Madlanga Commission. If witness protection is being spoken about, they do not trust it because they say it's being run by the same police officers who the Madlanga Commission is also speaking about and laying serious concerns about bear there. How do you address that concern with some of our viewers?
Okay, I just want to start with the issue of litigation and psychological matters that Martha has raised, Bongiwa, so that we don't lose track of that.
Yes.
If we look at the current legislation proposals, those are also covered. We also reflect on the issues of legislation in terms of litigation, that the state has a duty to bear the legal cost of the whistleblower. Number two, the issue of psychological support, we call it psychosocial support, is also included there. I think we'll look forward to what Martha says, that they are making suggestions, for example, around the issue of the name change of the actual legislation, but also in terms of reparations. One of the issues, for example, going forward that has been proposed, I just thought somebody was making that, and I think it's one of the submissions that we're receiving. They're making a proposal to say, why don't you set aside a particular amount out of CARA funding? Because CARA rules and legislation talks about support for law enforcement agencies and victims of crime.
Yeah.
And therefore, some of the proposals that are coming there back are those. We are looking into those. We've not really applied our minds, I want to be honest, Martha, in terms of retrospectivity, especially not on the implementation, but also on the act itself. But we'll look into it perhaps maybe and say, where do we start? Because as we say, Babita was not at Zondo Commission. Sure. So if you go to Zondo Commission, somebody might say you are excluding others. Sure. How would we look at broadly who becomes part of the reparation if we do decide to be in the reparation? So I'm looking forward to those suggestions. I thought we shouldn't close this because it might not be only her, but many others are wanting to know what is happening, and that's what I would want to raise. I thought that's the first thing I wanted to deal with.
And Minister, I'm going to take a quick break because you and I clearly have another conversation we need to have about this, because I know it's still open for public comment. It is until the 14th of May, but there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say. So let's...
no, we'll still have time, even in Parliament.
I know.
Once we close, we go. There's still time.
Yes, and you and I have a lot to talk about, but for now, let's just pause. I guess it's in Jeshelele 8 Siabuya Masbuya will close the show, but this is a conversation that is ongoing. Mbogeli, time is always the enemy. Let me take my guest's final thoughts. Martha, for you, before I circle back to the Minister for her final thoughts, what is the one thing that you wish for us as a nation to know is a cost that whistleblowers bear?
Your life is never the same. Your family is affected. Your children are affected. It's a mess. It really is a right royal mess to think that you have people that have agendas, right? And I mean, I'm going to talk about democracy. You know, when the president spoke about Tumamina, and we bought into that. You know, we thought we are coming into democracy where when somebody sees something wrong that is being done, they would be able to do something about it. But that's not the case. I think what we're asking for, at least, is that can our government at least employ people who are honest and who are competent to do the functions that they're supposed to do. Because I believe that once we have competency, we won't have issues of whistleblowing, you know, coming up. Because we've got people that have got agenda, that have got mandates that have been given to them, that are dishonest, that are incompetent, right? That are leading these state-owned enterprises. We have issues where we then have to come out and have professionals being exposed. So let our government please employ people that are competent, that are honest, because you can have the best laws, right? But if you have a system that is just dysfunctional, those laws are not going to make sense anyway.
Minister, briefly for you, what becomes your parting shot with us? I know the bill is out for public comment till the 14th of May, but let's talk. Your final parting shot briefly.
No, definitely. We looking forward to the comments. We've heard South Africans, the call that we need to protect whistleblowers. As Martha is saying, it's a call to duty. I do believe that a lot of work, Martha, I don't think you and many others, your work has been worthless. If you look at the Public Service Act, that has been signed into law by the president, it's the work of many of you who have raised concerns about the people that are employed in the state and what they have been able to destroy. We've seen the impact of destruction of institutions. Many people still say there was no state capture. Many people say there was no destruction, but those of us who are in government, those of us in various responsibilities know that there has been destruction. And to rebuild doesn't take overnight. We do have to work together to be able to build, because it's our duty for the country and for the future generation. We can't give up. So I am appealing that fighting crime, as we say, fighting corruption and crime in the country is everybody's business. We've got to play our part. And definitely corruption is not a victimless crime. It has victims, those who didn't have their houses, that were meant to have their houses, those who went to a clinic and never found a medicine or got wrong treatment because the machines were not there. Those who went to a police station looking for a docket to be open because they've been raped and they find no help. That's because of corruption. Those are the victims in our country, and we've got to be able to work to protect them and to save them. But we all have to do our part to build a better South Africa.
We've just started on this conversation, and I know both you and the Minister, Martha, we are going to have more of these conversations. Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. And Martha, to you as well. Thank you, and strength. I know it takes a lot to have to come and talk about some of these issues. Mbukela sibonge naku ukuthi uhlanganyele kanye nathi nehambele zethu Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamuluko Kubayi and the whistleblower Martha Ngoye. Mbukela axabe kuze kube ngokuzayo.